What I would do is I would bomb Iran's oil infrastructure. The money financing terrorism comes from Iran. It's time for this terrorist state to pay a price for financing and supporting all this chaos. Yes, if you're the Iranians, if it were up to me, this war escalates, I'm coming after you.
I think this is what I'm trying to clarify here, because I'm wondering if
us and Israel.
Us, the United States and
Israel.
No,
I want to be crystal clear.
The United. Let me just understand you, just to be clear. You're saying that you would want the United States and Israel to bomb Iran, even in the absence of direct evidence of their involvement in this attack.
Yeah. So if there's an escalation, Abby, if there's people's throats being cut on television as Israel goes into Gaza and they're threatening to kill the hostages, if Hezbollah is unleashed on Israel in the north, it will be because Iran is supporting that. If you don't get the connection between Iran and this terrorist activity by Hamas and Hezbollah, you're missing a lot. This is a terrorist state that has American blood on its hands. It is now time to dismantle the financing system of terrorism if this war escalates. Yes, I would do a joint military operation. I tell the Iranians today, if the war escalates, you will pay a price. You will be out of the oil business. I want to be crystal clear on that. And if we don't do that, what do you expect to happen in the future? Do you expect Israel to forgive and forget? Biden didn't mention one word about Iran today, and I want to support the president. I'm supporting the Saudi-Israel peace deal. Israel made peace with several Arab countries through the Abraham Accords. I want to help the Palestinians we can do business with as part of a Saudi-Israel peace deal. But I'm tired of letting Iran, I think they did this to stop the Saudi-Arab peace negotiations, the Iranians. I don't want to reward them. I want to punish them.
Multiple cities in Gaza are bombed, leaving over 260,000 displaced. Approximately 3,000 people are killed, unofficially 5,000, with Israel creating a wartime cabinet that involves the centrist Labor Party connecting with the Likud, and protests breaking out all over the world, and protests are expected across the United States starting tomorrow, including here in New York City. And as always, I will report the news, and let's read about what's going on right now. Currently, there's a lot going on, so bear with me. Israel-Hamas live. Iran says new fronts may open if Gaza bombing continues. Israeli military tells UN Palestinians north of Wadi Gaza must move in the next 24 hours as the bombing continues systematically, neighborhood by neighborhood. An ominous warning from the Israeli military, which according to Reuters news agency, has told the United Nations that all Palestinians north of Wadi Gaza, which lies roughly in the center of the Gaza Strip, must relocate to the south of the enclave in the next 24 hours. A UN spokesman said that the demand encompasses 1.1 million people, around half of the population of Gaza, and said that the UN strongly appealed for the order to be rescinded. The United Nations consider it impossible for such a movement to take place without devastating humanitarian consequences, UN spokesman Stephanie Dujarric said. Dujarric said that the order could transform what is already a tragedy into a calamitous situation. He added that the order applied to all UN staff and those sheltering in UN facilities, including schools, health centers, and clinics. The north of the Gaza Strip includes the biggest population center of Gaza City, as well as the Jabalia refugee camp in the areas of Beit Lahia and Beit Hanun. North Korea denies its weapon use by Hamas against Israel. As you could see, like I said in previous videos, this is extending upon the borders. This is the real Cold War. North Korea has denied that weapons it produced were used by Hamas in the recent attacks against Israel, and has accused the United States of making false accusations. Really? Lying? North Korea, state-run news agency, published an article on Friday in which the analysts blasted attempts to link Pyongyang to the war between Israel and Hamas. What cannot be overlooked is that the United States is once again sticking to its malicious slander campaign against our republic in a bid to contend us to the latest conflict in the Middle East. The North Korean analyst Ri Kwang-song was quoted as saying by the North Central News Agency. Hamas military wing says that it can defend Gaza against ground invasion. Hamas military wing, the Qassam Brigades, has said it is capable of fighting off Israeli land invasion of Gaza. We reassert our readiness with God's help in the defense aspect, and the enemy's suggestion of widening the aggression via land will push us to activate new options that will mount massive losses on the enemy. Hamas in denial. World Health Organization warns Gaza hospitals at breaking point. The World Health Organization is warning that Gaza's health system has reached a breaking point and there is little time to prevent a humanitarian catastrophe. Injuries and fatalities are rising amid Israel's land, air, and naval attacks on the densely populated Gaza Strip, which is home to more than 2 million people. And the enclave's badly overburdened hospitals are suffering acute shortages of medical supplies. And there are reports of residents showing videos. And now let me just add to this too. With the restriction of no electricity, no water, now there's very little internet, if anybody has an internet left. Information coming out of Gaza is now limited to Israel only. So that means whatever is happening in Gaza will be told by the Israelis. The Gazans who are actually in the first 48 hours of the conflict, who are showing Israeli aerial attacks, which are bombarding, completely flattening neighborhoods like Khan Younis, neighborhoods like Jabalia and Karama, destroying these neighborhoods. And let me just share you a photograph just to, reiterate the problem. Israeli airstrikes toward Gaza continue. Israeli airstrikes have displaced more than 260,000 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, according to UN. Karama neighborhood, Jabalia, Rimal, Khan Younis. These neighborhoods almost look like Syria, in which Israel's bombing as well. It almost looks like, old photographs of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Complete neighborhoods destroyed, gone. And here's a map of the Gaza Strip in orange, dark orange here. It's a systematic destruction of an enclave under military occupation. Is there any safe place? Residents say Gaza is under attack like never before. The pleas from inside Gaza for Israel's relentless bombardments have plunged the densely populated areas into humanitarian crisis. The enclave is now under complete siege. Israel has cut off food, water, fuel, and electricity in retaliation for the attack Hamas carried out in Israel's southern towns. The territory's main power plant ran out of fuel Wednesday, plunging Gaza's 2.3 million residents into darkness. Videos from, let me get rid of this. Videos from inside Gaza show entire blocks reduced to rubble and children being pulled from the debris. By the way, the Western media propagating false stories about children being beheaded by Hamas. The people really killing children are the Israeli military killing Palestinian children. Over 500 children are killed. But the whole goal of bombing Gaza was not to get rid of Hamas only, it's to get rid of the Palestinians. That's not me saying it. That's the Israeli government saying it. And I've been saying it before the attack even took place. In my previous video, if you haven't watched it, please watch it, because I mentioned Benjamin Netanyahu's right-wing racist cabinet. And they'll tell you straight up what they want. The National Security Minister, Ben-Gvir, has basically publicly stated that he wants to kill all Palestinians. And I got profiles on Twitter basically saying to me, who's calling for genocide on the American and Israeli side? I mean, God's sakes. I mean, they're saying it straight out. Some 24 families have been wiped out since Saturday. 24 families. I mean, this is a war crime. Anywhere else on the face of the earth, this is a war crime. But because it's Israel, they get the protection from the United States and their coalition partners and the legacy media by default. They're the victim here, not the Palestinians. The infrastructure, already weakened by a 16-year blockade and 4 previous wars since 2008, is now being crushed. It's something Palestinians say they've never seen before. The airstrikes are everywhere. The bombs are everywhere. The smell of death is everywhere, said Waji Abu Zaria, a journalist in Gaza. Last night, he found himself stranded in darkness outside the main hospital. Abu Zarev said it was too dark for people to move, and fuel is running out for transportation. So, what is being set up on the Israeli government side? Well, a wartime cabinet. Netanyahu sets up emergency Israeli unity government and war cabinet. That means the blue and white party, which is headed by Benny Ganz, the president, and the Likud party, led by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This is expected. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced an emergency wartime cabinet as pressure mounts for the establishment of corridors to allow aid and medicine into the Gaza Strip and to allow civilians to leave. Benny Gantz, a senior opposition figure and former defense minister, joined the government for the duration of the conflict. Who knows how long that's going to be? Because if the conflict extends outside of Gaza, if it extends into Lebanon, into Syria, which it already is because they're bombing the airports in Syria, they're bombing the southern areas of Lebanon, and they're already blaming Hezbollah and Iran for Hamas's attack, which they have no evidence for. I mean, you heard it in the video I played initially before mine. Lindsey Graham doesn't care if there's evidence. I bomb them anyway. What's the difference between him and Hamas? Netanyahu, Ganz, and Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, are forming a war cabinet. Israeli troops continue to build in the south of the country in preparation for an expected ground invasion, a ground invasion of their own prison. To get rid of the Palestinians, to displace them forever. They're not coming back. There's nothing to come back to, even if they want to. And those who stay are either going to get killed or become under the total control of this Israeli government, which basically is racist. Admittedly so. So their lives will be a living hell. In a televised address late on Wednesday, Netanyahu described atrocities that took place during the weekend attack by Hamas militants, who he said shot children in the head, burned people alive, raped women, and beheaded soldiers. Every Hamas member is a dead man. We will crush and destroy it. Ganz told Israeli citizens that the newly formed government was united and ready to wipe this thing called Hamas off the face of the earth. Is every neighborhood in Gaza Hamas-oriented? Well, according to Israel, yes. Is every house housing a Hamas operative? Is every hospital hiding Hamas rocket launchers? Is every school hiding a cache of weapons by Hamas? Well, that's what the Israeli defense uses every single time. And why is there a wartime cabinet? Well, basically, it's to show that, indeed, the war will extend outside these borders. Now, if you don't believe me, here is Lindsey Graham on Fox News. Listen. I'm sorry, it froze. You have to forgive me for that one. I'll play it. See if I can play it this time. Okay, here we go.
Absolutely appalling, disgusting to the Secretary General of the United Nations, who I consider a friend. You said today we had to understand this conflict in a greater context. My friend, Hamas
BS.
doesn't want us to two-state solution. They want to kill the Jews just like the Nazis did. I am tired of appeasing Hamas, apologizing for them. This is not a land problem, a boundary problem. It's a problem of you cannot live in my world. My God determines that you die. Iran and Hamas believes that the Jewish people should die as a result of religious teachings. We're in a religious war here. I am with Israel. Do whatever the hell you have to do to defend yourself. Level the place.
Need I say any more? This is exactly what the Christian nationalists want in the conservative movement. It's what they always wanted. Now, I consider Hamas un-Islamic. Same thing for the Islamic State and Al-Qaeda. And any layman in understanding monotheism would agree, especially with the teachings of Islam. Is it not in the book of Al-Baqarah in the Quran, where it states that whoever kills one person, it's as if he killed mankind? Well, that would consider Hamas un-Islamic, right? Now, Lindsey Graham is not Hamas. He's not Al-Qaeda. He's not Islamic State. So he wants Israel to basically wipe out all of Palestine. That's what he didn't say that, but that's exactly what he said, level the place. He didn't say destroy all of Hamas. He said level the place. What do you think he meant there? If he sees this as a religious war, he sees it as a Christian Zionist crusader army against, the Islamic army, thinking this is the 12th century. That's what makes these people dangerous. He's a fascist, a warmongering fascist. You can't deny that. That's his own words. And there's no evidence that Iran was involved with this Hamas attack. What evidence is there? And he doesn't care if there's no evidence. Bomb them too. This is a religious war. You think he's an actual Christian? He's a fascist, a nationalist. Israel cripples Syria's 2 main airports in strikes. What does Syria have to do with this? Incidentally enough, it was Syria and Iran and their proxy armies that were fighting against the Islamic State in Syria, yet the United States and Israel were supporting the Salafi militants in Syria against their governments. Why? All you have to do is take a look at the bigger picture of what's going on here. That this is always a war with Israel, Saudi Arabia, and the United States' preconceived enemies, which are Iran and by default Syria and Lebanon. In other words, the Muslim countries that are not Western backed. That's why they killed Muammar Gaddafi. That's why they try to kill Bashar al-Assad and Saddam Hussein. They did. Israel's launched missile strikes on Syria's two main airports in Damascus and the northern city of Aleppo, knocking both out of service, Syrian state media has said. The simultaneous attacks damaged landing strips in the two airports, putting them out of service, state news agency Sana said on Thursday, citing a military source. No one was injured in the attack, Sana said, quoting the unnamed military source. Syrian air defenses were activated in response to the attacks on both airports, television channel Sham FM said. So what's the point? And we all know what the point is, because what Israel wants is to extend the borders of this war. And they need the United States, because without the United States, they can't do it. Israel cannot fight on their own. They'll lose, just like they did in 2006 against the Hezbollah army in Lebanon. And already we're seeing a number of war crimes being perpetrated by the Israeli army. Israel, white phosphorus used in Gaza, Lebanon. Lebanon. What did I tell you in the previous videos? Israel's use of white phosphorus in military operations in Gaza and Lebanon puts civilians at risk of serious and long-term injuries, Human Rights Watch said Tuesday in releasing a question and answer document on white phosphorus. Now, according to the International Criminal Courts, white phosphorus used as an incendiary on civilian populations is a war crime. Human Rights Watch verified videos taken in Lebanon and Gaza on October 10th and 11th, respectively, showing multiple airbursts of artillery-fired white phosphorus over the Gaza City port and two rural locations along the Israeli-Lebanon border, and interviewed two people who described an attack in Gaza. White phosphorus, which can be used either for making, signaling, and obscuring, or as a weapon to set fires that burn people and objects, has a significant incendiary effect that can severely burn people and set structures, fields, and other civilian objects into the vicinity on fire. Now, with all of what's going on, of course, there's going to be an outcry by the people. And we're starting to see protests happening around the world. There were pockets of protests beginning yesterday here in New York City. Tempers flared during dueling Israeli-Palestine protests at New York City universities, showing deep divisions. Tempers flared during protests at college campuses across New York City on Thursday after Hamas shock attack against Israel 5 days ago, with supporters of Israel screaming that Palestinians are terrorists and pro-Palestine activists chanting that they would not give in to imperialism. The demonstrations, one at CUNY's Brooklyn College campus, another at Hunter College in Manhattan, and a third at Columbia, illuminated the sharp divides not only between Israel and the Palestinian territories, but their supporters here in the United States. No one should ever revel in somebody else's murder, David Brodatsky, a professor at Judaic Studies at Brooklyn College, said to the Post on Thursday as he held a sign that read, "May you revel in our murder." When we lose that, society starts to crumble, he added. That's why we're here. And of course, a very good friend of mine, Nicole, basically informed me about, whether to go into the city tomorrow or not. And when I looked up, because I was in the gym at the time, and I couldn't see what was going on. And I noticed that the New York City governor, Kathy Hochul, and New York City mayor outlined increased security efforts ahead of expected mass protest Friday. Now, here's the problem: is that it's going to be unpredictable. Will there be violence on both sides? Will it be one-sided? Well, there won't be violence. We don't know. And with such a hot topic as this, I'm going to expect there's going to be infiltrators on both sides perpetrating violence, which basically overrides the overall message of the protests, which is stop the war crimes in Gaza. That's what they did to Occupy Wall Street. You had members of the New York City Joint Terrorism Task Force and the FBI infiltrating Occupy Wall Street, sending back information, trying to get leaders of the group to spy on each other. Ever since then, we have not had a large successful protest. I think the biggest protest we've seen in our history was the Iraq War. Millions of people were happening around the world. Mayor Eric Adams and Governor Kathy Hochul outlined steps that the city and state are taking to increase security and law enforcement support across New York City and New York State, with an expectation of additional protests of the Israel-Hamas war on Friday. According to Eric Adams, the NYPD will surge additional resources to schools and houses of worship to ensure that they are safe, and will bring more NYPD patrols to specific neighborhoods. The NYPD also posted to X, I'm just going to call it Twitter because X is stupid, formerly known as Twitter, that the department has increased our uniformed deployments at large gatherings and cultural sites. What I said in previous videos about this extending beyond Gaza's borders is most likely a reality. We're seeing bombings on the southern border of Lebanon, in Syria. What's left? Iran, a full-scale invasion. And they need the U.S. for that. Now, what the United States and Israel are doing is awash the legacy media with propaganda, even false stories, like the 40 babies being beheaded. That's a false story. Didn't stop President Biden to basically say it on air. And then later, a White House spokesman would release a press release saying, no, he didn't see a video because it doesn't exist, and that this report is unverified. But the thought's already out there. And basically, it's to revulse the community into saying, maybe Israel is right in bombing these neighborhoods in Gaza. They have every right to. Babies being beheaded? Oh, my God. Kill these people. And we're seeing it. Just like what we saw after 9/11. We saw a large contingent of the conservative movement basically calling for a war against anybody, and war against Muslims. We're seeing it here. Hamas is basically in denial, saying that they can fend off against an Israeli ground invasion. No, they can't. The Qassam brigades cannot fight against the Israeli military. Not in a closed environment like that. They don't have enough weapons. They don't have enough means, and they'll get destroyed. And in the process, the Israeli military, led by this government, will destroy the Palestinians in the process and say, well, it looks like they were hiding Hamas, or they were Hamas. Their neighborhoods are hiding Hamas members. That's why we had to flatten it. That's why we had to destroy the schools, destroy the hospitals. Now, Egypt is actually letting in first responders, but it's not enough. Israel's controlling those borders as well. A number of war crimes already happened. The International Theater is blaring it on their own websites, pleading with Israel to stop this incursion. And they're not going to stop. They just started. Doesn't stop our senators to basically go on Twitter and Facebook and declare that the United States maybe have to redirect funds to Ukraine, to Israel, phasing out one war to a much bigger war, the prospects of a much bigger war anyway. And to those who are basically questioning whether the United States or Israel are committing genocide, ask yourself this question. How many Palestinians need to die in order to justify what Hamas did? 3,000? 5,000? 10,000? 20? 100,000? A million? The Iraq war costed approximately anywhere between 1.2 to 1.5 million people, depending on what numbers you go by. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch. That didn't stop the U.S. from basically applauding. And then, years afterwards, they're like, you know what? Maybe that was a mistake. Maybe. So you have to ask yourself the question, where is the justice here, right? Where is the justice? Is it in Khan Younis? Is it in Rimal? Where? Where does it lie? Is it in Gaza City? Where does it stop? Does it stop in Lebanon? Oh, we got to eliminate the threat. Hezbollah and Hamas are together. The news media, it's not me saying this. It's the news media saying this. That's why I read the news back to you. But I do it without a slant. I don't need to. All I care about is real justice and real evidence and real information, because I believe in the empowerment of the people. I can't empower people with conspiracies that are false or innuendo or speculation, because it leads to paralysis. We can't do nothing with it. If we're going to change the world, we need an informed world. We need to know what's going on in our name, not just in the name of the United States, but in the name of humanity. If we're going to defeat evil, we need to condemn evil in all forms, not just with Hamas, but the Israeli government. They have no right in flattening these neighborhoods to non-existence. It's a war crime. That's why we have laws. If we have laws for some and laws basically not existing for others, what's the sense of the law? And for those who are questioning the motives of Hamas or the motives of the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, all you have to do is listen to the declarations of these people, and they'll tell you it has everything to do with the current conditions against the Palestinians in Gaza Strip and West Bank. How would you like it to live under military occupation, to have your lives directed at the hands of a government, a racist right-wing government? How would you like it if you had to pay for your own drinking water, which Palestinians have to pay for? They have to. For a lot of people don't know that. Palestinians have to pay for their own drinking water. That's why they take control of all the water in the city. How would you like it if you had racially segregated checkpoints? Just think of that. Racially segregated checkpoints. It's absurd in its own right. How would you like it if Israeli tanks or jeeps, not just Israel, but I'm just saying, imagine tanks and jeeps shooting at your kids with rubber bullets, or shooting them in the head for protesting at the fence and throwing rocks at soldiers? Does that justify the killing of journalists and children? Well, that's what the Israeli military has been doing. Because if you're looking to overlook all of this because you say that, well, they shouldn't have voted for Hamas, or that they shouldn't throw rocks at the military, well, then you are advocating that people should live under a brutal, racist dictatorship under military occupation. It's easy to sit back in your chair and play armchair quarterback and basically say, well, that's what they deserve. They shouldn't have voted for Hamas. Like all the Palestinians voted for Hamas. Oh, now you believe in actual elections, huh? Conservatives? Aren't you the ones who always question about the validity of elections? Oh, we'll believe that one, though. hypocrisy is rife within the American public, whether it's left or right, whether it's Christian, Jew, or Muslim, whether it's black or white. If you only look at information and you only acquiesce to your certain beliefs and worldviews because they acquiesce to yours, you're a hypocrite. And you can't use the word justice, because the word you should be using is just us. Laws for just us. Justice for just us and not them. Or as Lindsey Graham says, just flatten the whole place. Even the Fox News analyst sat there and said, there's no evidence that Iran is behind this. And Lindsey Graham basically is saying, who cares? Bomb them anyway. So, as for the residents here in New York who are watching this video, if they are at all, take great precautions. I did manage to call a couple of friends of mine and told them to be very careful. If you don't have to, don't go into the city. But if you do and you want to protest, do it peacefully. And by the way, for any anti-Jews out there who are hiding behind the veil, the transparent veil of anti-Zionism, don't comment, you're a hypocrite. You know what you are? You're an anti-Jew. End of story. You might be in the protest tomorrow. The fanatics of Israel, they're already out there. I mean, they were in front of Columbia. I mean, I think Gray Zone actually interviewed some of these people saying we need to kill all the Palestinians. I mean, the fanatics are going to come out, and they're the ones who are going to get the press. But there's going to be a one-sided story to this. It's going to be the fanatics for the Palestinians. But you see, that's how they are. You see, that's what the media is doing, and they're already doing it. They're already doing it because even certain press here in New York are saying that the protests are pro-terrorist. Even the governor is saying it, Kathy Hochul. If the Palestinians are terrorists, then what are the Israeli government? Are they not fitting of the term terrorist? Their actions speak of it. They bomb whole neighborhoods. They admit in their own words that they want to kill Palestinians, that they want to take over Gaza and raze it and destroy it. Who cares about civilians? They shoot at children. They have killed children. For those who condemn Hamas for killing children. The hypocrisy and the propaganda are going to be a wash from this point out. And I don't blame you if you're, throw your hands in the air and you're exasperated and saying, I don't know what to believe. But there are a few people out there that are telling the truth. And, I hope that in the public's eye, that I am as nonpartisan and straight down the line in my reporting as I can be. And I try to do the best I can. Because I'm not looking at this as pro-Palestinian or pro-Israeli. I'm looking at it as pro-human. Because if we don't have that, we don't have anything at all. So with that being said, I will let you go. As always, I will report the news without bias and without prejudice, and I will keep you always updated. Have a good night, everybody, and stay safe.